Welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers. My name is Maggie Gordon Walker, and I'm the founder and director of Mothers Uncovered. Join us as we explore and share the incredible stories of mothers when life has thrown at them challenge and, in some cases, trauma. Discover how the skills we learn in matrescence, which means becoming a mother, can teach us about more than motherhood. They teach us also about unconditional love, resilience, and acceptance. I'm joined today by Caro Giles, who is an author and single parent carer. She now lives in Glasgow with her 4 daughters. Her first book, 12 Moons, is a memoir about her wild life in Northumberland with the girls, and her next book, Unschooled, is out now. Caro also writes a monthly column for Psychology's magazine. Caro, welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers.
So nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I mentioned Glasgow there, so that's where you are in the country now. Is this the same area as you grew up in?
No, I grew up all over England. This is the first time I've lived in Scotland, but I've lived in the southwest of England, in the north of England, in London. I always say I'm the girl from nowhere because it's really hard for me to describe where my home has been. And I'm actually lots of my writing explores the idea of, the nature of home. So I don't know where I belong really, but for now I belong in Glasgow.
Okay. So what would we need to know about you to understand how you would describe yourself as a mother?
I guess lots of people think my mothering situation is fairly extreme because for the last 8 years I've been a single mother and I have 4 daughters. So that's already a ratio that's kind of stacked against me. But in
Style
addition,
outnumbered you are.
yeah, but in addition to the fact that I'm raising the 4 kids mostly on my own, 2 of my children have complex needs and have been unable to access education at school. And so, as well as running a household and trying to work and just doing the normal mothering things, I've also been required to support my daughter's education at home and to fight the various systems that should be in place to support families like mine, but are kind of creaking and breaking and are quite hostile. Um, so so I'd say my mothering situation's fairly high octane. But I have been trying to find a way to, I guess, to thrive and to make the most of the challenge that's thrown at us as a family, which I think is probably how I came to writing.
What ages are all your daughters?
So my oldest is 18 now, and my littlest one is 10, and then there are 2 more in between. So they're much older now. But what I'm learning as a mother is that even though the baby years are kind of exhausting, physically exhausting and hormonal and all of those things, actually as your children get older, the demands just change. And if you've got kids with complex needs as well, then what you consider to be independence or success looks quite different as well. So I've had to shape my life and the way our family exists, I guess, in order to meet very differing needs, between the 4 girls.
Yes, I totally understand. I have a similar kind of thinking that as they get older, it's less physically exhausting. You haven't got those sleepless nights, except you do when they're out and about and you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
But in general, you don't have that. But it's sort of mentally equally as exhausting because you worry about them, but you can't fix it in the way that you could when they were younger. Or, you obviously have experience of continually trying to fix it because the system is not geared up to help children
Yeah,
who don't fit that
no,
box.
exactly. And I think it's also emotionally exhausting and kind of terrifying too, because you want your children to be independent and to feel safe to make mistakes in order to, because obviously that's how we learn. But I think as a solo parent as well, um, I have found it challenging not to have someone else to share the worry with and to I'm always the good cop and the bad cop, and that's exhausting too. I've got no one I can kind of deflect the issue onto. I'm always trying to be everything to the kids, and I think that is unrealistic actually. But over the years I've been on my own, I've realized it's unrealistic to expect I can be everything to my kids, but I have often felt a pressure, to try and meet all needs when my family unit is not traditional. So yeah,
Yes.
I think I've probably been
Yeah,
harder on myself than I should have been probably.
I totally get it. I've been a solo parent since mine were 12 and 9. And you're right, you are good, bad cop. And there's, even if people say, oh, I'm not with my partner anymore, it's still another person who's out there in the world who
Yeah,
could bounce ideas off.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't have that. So yeah, wow, I think you're doing amazing. Caro.
Still standing at the moment.
Still standing. So yes, let's talk about the home educating. So you did that through necessity rather than choice, because your first daughter started struggling with school when she was only 6. Can you talk us through the process? From when she started school to when you started seeing things weren't working for her.
Yeah, I think although my situation is very extreme and became more extreme over the years, I do think many parents will recognize the challenge sometimes of getting children into school and to helping them to thrive in the school environment. My oldest daughter, Matilda, is very academic on paper. She learned to read when she was 3. She's very, very curious. Yeah, but she just found it very, very difficult to separate from me and also to thrive inside a busy kind of the sensory environment that a school classroom offers. And the challenge I found was being disbelieved as a parent, because often when I'd gone, the school would say, "Oh, she's absolutely fine when you're not there, when you've gone." And the implication there was you are making her anxious, you are creating
Mm.
a situation here. But I knew from the fact that Matilda wasn't sleeping, that she was getting very pale, that she was becoming very quiet and withdrawn. She was really disappearing in front of my eyes, and so she was ticking all of the boxes at school, which meant that school wasn't worried about her in the same way that I was, because Matilda had become very adept at masking her anxiety in the classroom. So at that point, when she was 6 and the school told me she was no longer speaking, that kind of horrified me because she'd always been very bubbly and chatty at home. I took her out of school at that point and home educated her alongside her sisters, who were really tiny then. So it was like they were a tribe of babies and little girls, and we would do lots of lovely things together and projects together, and I would still manage to do some freelance work. And it wasn't really until I tried to get Matilda back into school when my marriage ended that I realised that school was just a completely hostile environment for her, and she got very, very poorly. And at that point, home education ceased to be something that I'd chosen to do, a lifestyle choice, and became a necessity because she just couldn't cope in a school environment. And then something very similar happened to Emmy, my third daughter, who also got a diagnosis of autism eventually. But the problem was with both girls that they were very smart and they were working above average in the classroom. And so they didn't flag up as a cause for concern because lots of the difficult behaviours were, I was seeing them at home, and it was hard for me to evidence them. So it was my word against everybody else's, and that became very problematic. Yeah, I write about that a lot, how my book really is a plea for parents to be heard and to be respected as the experts of their child, because in my experience I have been forced again and again to demonstrate my children failing inside the school system rather than being believed, and that's been the hardest thing, I think.
Yeah. So when Matilda, so she stopped speaking at school, was she still speaking when she was at home with you, or did it impact her home life?
Yeah, no, she did speak at home with us, and then her speech is fine now, although when she's very burned out, sometimes her speech will be the thing that goes. But with Emmy, she stopped speaking almost entirely for about 6 months. around the time I was taking her out of school, and now speaking is still really problematic for her, just because I think she has become so burned out from trying to fit into a system that couldn't really meet need for her. So it was just a symptom of the unsuitability of school and of their unhappiness and of the fact that their needs were not correctly diagnosed or recognised. But for me, that was the thing that made me think, no, this is not the right environment for her.
So frightening to, as you say, watch your child disappear in
Yeah,
front of you. You know, the little bouncy thing that, had so much confidence and joy, and suddenly they're just withdrawn and anxious.
and
Horrible.
I found it really difficult. Like even now, when Emmy speaks to me, it's such a precious thing because because her words are so rarely heard. She's so rarely is able to still to make her voice heard, and I really and because she had spoken for many years, it really did feel like a loss actually, when her words disappeared. She articulates herself in lots of other ways, but for sure it's something that I hope will continue to improve as she spends less time out of school and more time having her needs properly met at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you are a mother, a carer, and you're a teacher as well. So you're uniquely placed to advocate from all of those perspectives. So
Yeah.
you said to me your standpoint is that education doesn't mean school. So can you talk a bit about the way we view education, and the way you perhaps view education and your drive for, well, rather traditional education's drive for inclusivity and how you differ from that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to say that the book I've written isn't an attempt to be overly critical of schools per se, because I don't work as a teacher anymore. No, I do my writing, but I've worked in lots of different schools, primary schools, secondary schools, special schools, and I see the benefit to so many children of that environment and of the really amazing staff that work in those schools. I think the problem is that we assume that school is still the only way to educate children. And if we think about how we got to where we are with schools came about, in the 19th century, in the form they are now, kind of to support an industrial revolution.
So yeah.
Things were done much more by rote. Everybody was kind of expected to do the same thing. We had no understanding really of different learning styles, and school was kind of geared towards getting people into work, where now I think we understand, we like to take a more holistic view of education. I think many people in society do want to take a holistic approach to education, but at the same time, the curriculum is narrowing and we are reducing things like arts subjects. We are having more prescriptive lesson plans. It's as a teacher personally, I found it harder and harder to follow the passions of the students I was working with and to kind of go off on a tangent and have space to breathe within a topic area. And it made teaching less enjoyable for me, but I also could see that students were less engaged because they were being told what they had to learn. And what I've learned as someone who's had to kind of de-school herself and learn how to support kids who struggle within those formal systems is that actually children are inherently curious and keen to pursue passions and will thrive when they are learning about something that they love. And so I suppose, not just for children like mine with complex needs, but for all children, I would love for school or provision outside of school to be something that is much more child-led, and something more skills-based, something more project-based, something that is just a little bit freer and gives us an opportunity to measure success in a different way rather than in a very formal way through exams or coursework. I
There
think,
is that's school in, is it Denmark? I think I remember hearing about it or
yeah,
reading about it,
Finland
where
as
it's
well. Yeah.
Finland. So they, a child say interested in skateboards, so they'll teach them how to build it. So they have to learn about physics and maths and design and all of that. Just comes just because they've created a skateboard or for whatever.
Yeah,
And
it's
you
a
see,
really lovely way
wow.
to learn. It's really nice to learn
Mm,
like that, but I think it just takes a huge shift in mindset from where we are now with our school system now, to where we should be. And the problem still, I think, is that we're saying that schools should be completely inclusive. The ideal for the government still is that all children are attending school 5 days a week, and that is just not something that will work for all children. And it's not what it's I don't think that the government is still listening to parents like me who are saying my child will break within that system. Let's rethink how we can support all children to learn. Let's think of a truly inclusive education that might preclude school for some kids.
So I'm interested to know, so it was the structure of school and the way they were learning that was the main problem, or interacting with other children that was, or a bit of both? What do you think was primarily?
I mean, I think it was lots of things. One of the things that was really difficult was that school has lots of transitions. So you would do 45 minutes of something, then there'd be a transition into something else. Well, Emmy and Matilda both like to take a deep dive into something and sit within that book or that project or that piece of writing or whatever it is that they're doing, sometimes for many hours. And that's how they work. If they have to go from one thing to another, that can make them very anxious. Also, any change is really hard for my kids. So if there's a different teacher in, or if there's a fire alarm, or there's a workshop one day instead of when they normally have maths, that's really problematic. So that's something that can be met in school. That wasn't the only thing, but it was one of the things. And then the social cues of interacting with other children, for some people who are autistic, that can be really difficult. And particularly once you get to high school, where social behaviors become much more complex and friendships become much more complex, that's another thing. And then all the sensory stuff, so the noise, the smells, so it's there were lots of different things that were not suitable for my kids, and they masked successfully for a long time, until sadly the mask fell away, and their mental health was hugely impacted by that. Because one of the things as well about what for many autistic people is it's hard for some autistic people to recognize how they're feeling and then also to communicate that as well. So these are kids who are just trying really hard to fit in, and it comes at a huge cost to their mental health often.
And to yours as well, I'd imagine. Can you, obviously it was some years ago that it happened with Matilda, can you remember some of the feelings that you had at the time, the kind of physical sensations?
Yeah, I mean, it did happen a long time ago with Matilda, eight years ago, but I still am in wranglings with local authorities for Emmy now. So once Matilda, after 3 or 4 years of all of the horrors with Matilda, I just thought life was going to improve a bit, and then Emmy got very unwell, so the same thing happened again. And I think the impact for me has been, I think the fact that I am here talking to you is in spite of the way that my family's been treated by local authorities and by mental health systems. I think I think I probably should be very unwell, and I know that I have really had to battle with my own anxiety by sometimes I've used medication, I do lots of exercise, I see a therapist. I work really hard, because you'll know as well as a single parent that if you go down, the whole family goes down. There's no one to replace you. So I have often just really felt the weight of the responsibility upon me. And I've also often felt very isolated and very lonely. And I know from other parents I speak to who are in the same position as me, even those who have supportive partners, that being at home with your children with no support is both a terrible responsibility, and it's just really isolating. And as someone who's an extrovert and who loves to be around people, I think that's the biggest challenge I have faced as a single parent carer. And that's what I try to speak to in my book, Unschooled, in an attempt to reassure people that they are not alone, and that and to validate their feelings. Because the other thing I found very hard about the last few years is the way I've been told by professionals that I am wrong, or I am hysterical, or I am interfering, or just being devalued, having my feelings devalued. That's been really bad for my mental health, and that's been one of the reasons I've tried to write myself back onto the page through the books and the journalism I've done.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk a bit more about the writing. So you said, you identified for your children, so that's fueled your writing.
Mm.
As so it's activism and both identity. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell us a bit more about your writing and particularly Unschooled, your book, how it came about, the journey from your thinking about it to it coming out very soon, isn't it? 2nd of
Yeah.
September or
2nd of
something?
September. Yeah, exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't really done much writing before. Started keep writing a blog when I started home educating, and then in lockdown I did an online master's in nature and travel writing. And at that point I was living in Northumberland and really wanted to explore through writing the landscape around me, but also my family's interaction with the beautiful landscape around me. So that was when I wrote 12 Moons, which was a story all about me and my tribe of wild girls, but it also was an attempt to understand how I had got lost inside my marriage and who I was now on the other side of that divorce. So that, and then I really like writing quite urgently. I'm an emotional writer and really pour my feelings onto the page. And at the time, I was in various tribunals and terrible mental health appointments for Emmy, and I really wanted to articulate what that felt like, because it felt as if my voice was getting lost and Emmy's voice had literally become lost as well. And so I wanted to be able to communicate to a wider audience the problems within these systems. And so that was how Unschooled started. It's called Unschooled, the story of a family that doesn't fit in.
Beautiful cover. For
Yes.
anyone listening to this, it's a picture of some figures walking along a beach. Just got their backs to us, and you can see the light on the edge of the waves. It's lovely.
It's
Looks like
really
it's moving. Well, you are moving it, but it's kind of got a real liveliness to
yeah,
the picture.
shimmery. And that's based on a photo that I took of the kids on the beach when we were in Northumberland, because we spent so much time on the beach. Yeah, so Unschooled it's kind of a plea for kindness and a plea for change. It's also it's a critique, I guess, of our education system, but mainly it's a very personal account of what it is to raise children and to educate children kind of against the odds, I guess. And I hope that it will, yeah, I see my writing as a form of, I call it gentle activism, and I don't know why. I think it's because sometimes people think when you write about domestic situations, there's something soft about that. But actually, my book is very fierce, and my words are angry. And so, yeah, I do see it as a form of activism, and I hope that the book will be used by policymakers and people in government to inform future decisions around special education.
Yeah. So yes, have you had any encounters, meetings, emails, whatever, with decision makers
Yeah,
around this, or other campaigners who might work in this field? Have you, what's that
yeah.
story
So I
been
mean,
like?
I've been in touch with local MPs. I mean, there's quite a lot of publicity coming out even this week around my book. So I'm hopeful that that will lead to conversations with people who can influence policy. But actually, that part of the problem of for people like me is that we are hidden away and we are unable to kind of attend events necessarily because of the needs of our kids, but also because yeah, we're on our own without any help. So I'm hoping that my words will speak for me, and certainly I will be using any platform I'm given to try to connect with people who can try to improve the system.
Mm. Yeah, wow. Let's hope, because it does need an overhaul, and though particularly obviously your the problems with your daughter started younger,
Yeah,
but even for the majority of children who get through primary kind of okay, it's those secondary school years that are just you
yeah,
know just
minefield.
dreadful, between 11 and 16, because it's like this burgeoning puberty period. Yeah, combining with a system that's really not set up to support children at all. As you say, it's just meant to kind of, like a sausage factory, put all that rough stuff, and out will come a nice sausage who will just be in the workplace and not
Yeah, and
question things.
and the other thing to think about is that society is changing so much. Technology will be doing so much of the work that is historically done by humans, and I mean another thing to be worried about on its own. But the point is that we don't need to be learning the same things that we were learning 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And we maybe need to be thinking a little bit more about how to nurture creativity, and curiosity and skills above knowledge that is abstract and we will not be putting into use.
So if you were designing a model, then it would, as you say, be more child-led. It would allow an unspecific amount of time for a child to explore something. If somebody said, "Here you go, Caro, you're in charge," how would you design such a curriculum, if indeed it would even be called that?
Yeah, I definitely would want. I mean, I've always worked successfully within a project-based model. So I would seek that for as long as possible before children needed to, hone in more on specific knowledge, depending on what career they wanted to go into. I would also think about why we feel the need for children to be in school so young, and why children need to be in school for 5 days a week. One of my children flexi schooled for a while, so she went in for 3 days a week, and that was so helpful for her because it meant she had time to kind of regulate on the days she wasn't in school, and she could access the classroom. I would make a plea for that, but obviously all of this depends upon funding a society that everybody can access that, because there's a huge impact upon me having children who can't attend school. It means I can't go out to work. So it's all well and good saying, oh, why do kids have to go to school 5 days a week? But we need proper childcare, which is still a huge problem in this country. I definitely would prefer for my children not to have started school at the age of 4. In other countries, they don't start till they're 7. That would be great, but who's supporting families to help their children learn up to that age as well? So, a massive overhaul is needed. Someone cleverer than me needs to think about that. But I would just ask for more flexibility within our education system, and I would argue for a different way of looking at success, because for me, my children are really successful, but because they haven't been at school, they're told that they have failed, and that's desperate for a child to be told that they have failed, when they're not even in double figures. It has a huge and damaging impact upon their mental health.
Yeah, for sure. And and then on yours, because you feel for them and with them.
Yeah.
So yes, as you said, you're a single mum, so we're not going to discuss the details of your marriage, but can you just talk a bit about how your life is different now to how it was then?
I guess I can say that when I was married, I still often felt like I was alone, which is probably why I'm not married anymore. So it's nice. I feel that my time on my own with the kids has been something that's been really joy-filled, as well as full of challenge. And as a tribe, we're kind of tight and we're proud of the stuff we've achieved. But that's not to say that I haven't felt judgment or sadness about raising the kids mostly on my own. I'm sad that I haven't had someone to share that with. But I've also tried really hard to demonstrate to the kids that all families look different, and our family isn't missing anything. Our family just looks a bit different to some other families. And now I'm in Glasgow, and I have a partner for the first time since I've been on my own for like 8 years. And we don't live together or anything, but it's very nice to have someone to share some of the difficult moments with. Ultimately, it's still just me, but it's nice to have another positive role model for the kids. And it's been sad, but it's been an adventure. And there have been ups and downs. I'm sure that will resonate with you as well. There's something incredibly empowering about doing stuff on your own, but also you can sometimes feel a bit othered. I think when my kids have certainly felt othered when they've seen dads doing pickups and things like that. That's been hard for them. So I think that's what I mean when I say I've tried to be everything to them. And obviously it's not possible to do that. But in the main, I just feel proud of us as a family.
Yeah. And like you say, it's we have a couple of role models that the boys have had around, and it's lovely for them. Yes, education needs to know, so does the concept of what a family is, perhaps, because there's always this drive for very conventional setups, and that doesn't that's a lot of families don't fit that mold
I think so. And
at
I think
all.
it was things like when I would read books to them, and there was always a mum and a dad, and that would make them really sad. And I really couldn't find many books back then, 6 years, 7 years ago, when I was reading picture books to the little ones, where there was a family that was just enough with just a mum. So I guess maybe part of my writing as well has been a way to kind of normalize our setup as well, even though it kind of appears extraordinary to to many people that read about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it just occurred to me. I nearly always ask my podcast guests about their, the birth of their children and the
Yeah.
early parenthood. Were they? We might as well just slot it in now. Were they reasonably straightforward? Your births, or were you hospital at home,
Yeah,
or a
no,
mix of both?
I had three home births with the first three. They were all born at home in water. And then by the time I got to the last one, I think my poor womb was kind of giving up, and she kept wriggling around, and she was breech. So I was going to have a section, and then I didn't in the end, but I was induced in hospital with her. So that was a hospital birth. But no, I think I was very lucky, and definitely enjoyed giving birth more than I enjoyed being pregnant, I think.
Right. Oh,
Very
that's an
sick.
unusual take.
Well, I was just always
And
really
those
sick.
those
Yeah.
early years, were they how did you navigate those? Were they difficult?
Yeah,
Or
they were difficult because I think my marriage was quite difficult, but they were also intense and wonderful. Like I breastfed all of them and carried them all around. I was home educating them all. I was just a whirl of daughters. Yeah, I look back very fond. I mean, I was knackered the whole time, but I look back very fondly um, on the time when the girls were all little. I loved being a mum to young children. I think I could have gone on having kids forever. I really loved the kind of mess of it all and the chaos of it all, and the feelings that it brought out in me. They were happy times as well as tricky times. I guess that
Mm,
probably most people would say that, wouldn't they, about the baby
yeah.
years? But yeah, I'm very fond of the times I had when the kids were little.
And how are the children with each other? Do they interact well? Are they, obviously you're going to have spats, but
Yeah,
do
they're
they
good.
feel like a little tribe together, do you think?
Yeah, they definitely feel like a tribe together, although all the older two especially becoming so independent now and wanting to be their own people and assert themselves, which is exactly as it should be. But ultimately, one of the reassuring things for me as a single mum has been that the four girls have each other's backs, and they look after each other as well. And that's a lovely thing to see. That's one of the nice things about having a big family, I think.
Definitely. So yeah, we like to talk here about the kind of concept of post-traumatic growth
Hmm.
as opposed to stress. So, all that you've been through with your daughters and the need to remove them from school, how has this changed you, do you think, and led you down the path that you're on?
I mean, I think it's forced me to consider a much less conventional way of being. And my upbringing was very conventional. My education was conventional. I think I'm an adventurous person, and I think I'm a very creative person. So in some ways, the unconventional path I've been forced to take has informed my creativity, and it's also forced me to consider what I really want, and also it's made me realize what I am capable of, and sometimes, often, maybe even I think I shouldn't have been forced to have been capable of everything I've achieved or that I've had to do for the kids, but I guess I feel proud of everything I've done, and I think I've met people I wouldn't have met. I also I think I can I understand. I understand different ways of being more now because I've had to advocate for my kids who've not been able to access everything, who in some ways have been quite disabled. So it's forced me to be much more open-minded. There are many positives that have come out of the challenge. Um, the hardest thing definitely has been doing everything on my own and the isolation. But actually, I've met so many wonderful people along the way, and I think I have found a way to express the challenge and kind of, channel it into something positive.
No, you certainly have. In fact, yeah, with the Unschooled, is is there a little section from it you can easily access and read out to us, or the back jacket? It would just be nice to get a sense of it for
Yeah.
anyone who must go and buy it when it comes out.
Will I just read you the blurb at the beginning? Otherwise, I'll have to
Yeah,
go into a
yeah, it'd be
big
really
long
nice.
section. I mean, my writing is very lyrical, and poetic. So for anybody who thinks this is, like a polemic about the education system, it's more than that. It's a love story, really. It's a love story to my kids, and that my own love story is woven through it, which has been a pleasant surprise. But I'll read you the blurb anyway. Caro Giles educates her daughters at home, but not through choice. Like many parents with children who don't fit into mainstream schools, her family has become marginalised by an education system that's chronically underfunded and unable to support special educational needs. A former schoolteacher herself, when Caro became a full-time educator and the sole advocate for her own girls, she was unaware just how much it would challenge her idea of motherhood and overwhelm her identity as a woman. With lyrical prose and unflinching honesty, she chronicles the relentless bureaucracy and isolation of being a single mother navigating a system that refuses to see her children. Unschooled is a searing memoir about the resilience, love, and true grit of a family forging its own path. It's also an urgent expression of resistance, demanding a more inclusive, compassionate education system that recognises and supports the unique needs of every child. So it is a book about education, but more than that, really, I think my writing is about the female identity and whether or not we can ever extricate the mother from the woman. That's what I'm really interested in writing about. So I think for anybody who is a mother or a carer in any capacity, this might be interesting for you because I'm constantly feeling that tussle between me trying to meet my own needs and meeting the needs of my 4 kids. And I write about that extensively in the book. So yeah, even if you've got kids who go to school very happily, I think if you're a mother, then you'll be interested in reading this book or 12 Moons.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yes, so Mothers Uncovered, the group I found, is all about saying, yes, you are a mother. Yes, you love being a mother, we hope,
Mhm.
but you are still there. And
For
we try
someone
and
else as
coax out
well.
the woman
Yeah.
behind it. I heard the expression fetal maternal chimerism the other day. Have you heard about
Oh,
that?
I've not heard that.
I mean, I haven't looked into the whole science of it, but it's kind of the concept that obviously when the baby's growing inside you, it shares your cells clearly.
Yeah.
And the assumption is once a baby is born, that that the cells would depart with the baby, but they stay in your bloodstream for quite a long time and potentially in your brain for the rest of your life. And it's just like, wow, it just
Wow.
permanently alters, this is, I'm a advocate for matrescence, as in
Yeah.
the transition to motherhood.
Yeah.
And it's just, and more, there's Lucy Jones's book, there's a lot of stuff being written about it. The kind of the understanding, it's just like when people sort of think, oh, that mother there, oh, she's so obsessed, she's worried, and this, that, and the other. It's just like, because she is still living, her children are still, within her, and she's within them. It's a big deal, which is why we need to kind of properly support that whole transition period.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also and really value it as well. A lot of the
yeah,
writing I do is about how undervalued unpaid care is as a carer, but also obviously mothers and fathers, but often the mothers. Let's be real.
yes,
Yeah,
generally is.
yeah.
Yeah. So Matilda was born in 2007. So
Mhm.
if the day or a couple of days before, if you were to write a letter to yourself with some advice, what do you think it would be?
I think it would be, and I wrote about this a lot in 12 Moons. I think it would be to trust my instincts. Um, I think I have done that actually as a mother, but even when Matilda was very little, obviously I didn't know she was autistic when she was a baby. She didn't get a diagnosis until she was about 13. Um, so she did everything differently, and I knew I was meeting her needs by doing things in a way that not all other mothers were doing it, but I was really criticized or made to feel less than for that. And I I look back at that woman, at that mother in those early days in 2007 and just want to hold her hand and let her know that she's doing a good job. So I think I just, yeah, if I was writing to myself back then, I just would tell myself to stick to my instincts and to know that I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sure, yeah, that makes total sense.
Mm.
So, yes, in Mothers Uncover, we use creativity to help coax out mothers' thoughts and experiences. And, you know, mothers often say, oh, I'm not a writer. But it's just like, well, just write down your life. That is writing. It doesn't have to be
Of course.
Shakespeare or whatever. So we can't do that over this podcast. But in a nod to that creativity, we like to think of like a matrescence disc, as you would
I love
if you
that
were on
idea.
Desert Island. Yeah, matrescence disc. So it's a song that you associate with motherhood. So whether that's when you were pregnant or when they were young or now or even your own mother, just something that you think is appropriate to you and as a mum in some
Yeah.
way.
So when one of the things, there was a time during COVID when Matilda got COVID, and for 6 months after that, she was unable to use her legs. She was in a wheelchair and she was really poorly. And around the time she was recovering from that and she started to be able to walk again, and in 12 Moons I write a lot about how swimming in the sea helped her to recover. Around about that time, I packed all 4 kids in the car and we drove from Northumberland up to the very north of Scotland to Agmelvic and camped on the edge of the coast there and swam with jellyfish and sat on rocks and looked at the moon and had a really wild holiday, just me and the kids. And Matilda had been so unwell and we'd been in lockdown as well, so there was definitely a sense of being away from our home and being free. And on that road trip we were looking out for eagles and looking at mountains, and it was just I felt really proud of that was like one of my proudest mothering moments, going on that holiday. And we had a playlist in the car, and one of the songs we listened to and the kids would sing along and do kind of funny backing tracks to was Pure by the Lightning Seeds. And whenever I hear that song now, it just really reminds me of driving through the Highlands with the 4 girls in the car. All of us just being really proud of ourselves for having survived, you know, the pandemic and terrible illness and awful meetings and everybody telling us that we were doing things wrong, but we were just a tribe. And yeah, that song really reminds me of that.
Lovely. I don't know that. I obviously know the Lightning Seeds. I don't think I know that one. I shall go and listen to it.
Yeah, go and listen. It's very upbeat.
I do like a dance myself. So, Caro, tell our listeners or watchers how they can find you on social media and your book, etc.
Yes. So you can pre-order my book. Probably when this goes out, it will be available to buy. So you can buy it anywhere where you get books, local bookshops, online, anywhere. But you can also find my words on Instagram at Caro Giles Writes, or on Substack as well. Or you can read my column in Psychologies. There's a big piece in The Guardian with me today as well. There might be a bit of me around at the minute just to publicise the book. You'll probably see me floating around, but the main place you can find me is in my books or online. 12 Moons is also available if you want to read if you want to read about our wild times in Northumberland. That's my earlier book. So lots of ways to find me.
Sounds fabulous. Caro, it's been lovely speaking to you. Thank you for coming to The Secret Life of Mothers.
Thanks so much for having me, Maggie.